Hello guys, what's up? In last video we have a small chat about what is Log4j vulnerability and how we can exploit it as a hackers, and what is the protective measures that we can take in our environment to protect us against similar attacks or vulnerability in the future. I hope you are doing a great job with covering this vulnerability and clearing any unpatched component of Log4j in your environment. So I decided to make this video to share with you what is the latest updates and to arrange our talking in more professional way. So as we mentioned before, the exploitation steps for Log4j, for those who doesn't follow the last video, is the data is sent from the hacker or the threat actor to the server via any protocol. It can be HTTP, it can be any sort of protocol, but within the content of this data, the hacker is sending a special payload or a special string. This string is targeting to exploit a function in the Log4j, which is the lookup function. And in this string, the hacker is directing the Log4j server to, instead of parsing this text or this string in the log file, it takes this string and try to do a lookup via internet. So the hacker will be effectively hosting a malicious Java class on the URL written here on this script. And remember to understand that the hacker is replacing the attacker.com with the command and control server, or the server that is hosting the malicious payload, and the hacker is effectively targeting the exploitation of Java naming and directory interface JNDI. So the response of the server that received this request, instead of replying to the user who initiated or triggering this malicious request, it will try to download the class instructed to download via the JNDI extension, and then after the server grabs the malicious payload from the internet, it can do anything that the hacker or the threat actor asking the server to do. As we said before, this is the remote code execution vulnerability, so many of scenarios can happen in this case. We may have a scenario for data exfiltration, we may have a scenario for ransomware, so it's a lot of possibilities, and that's why this vulnerability is considered very critical and have 10 of 10 score. The credit goes to the URL listed here in this slide, so I will share this URL in the description. So what are the recommendations? The recommendations is what is called by Apache, or the vendor of Log4j. The clear recommendations instruct all users to patch or upgrade the current Log4j component if it is used in their environment to version 2.15.0. But if you don't have the ability to do the upgrade right now, because it might be related to developing team, some companies are outsourcing the development, so they may not have responsible people right now to do this sort of activity, the sort of upgrading, of course. So they can modify the default behavior of Log4j if they are running version 2 or above, to disable the name lookup, or to disable the format of message lookup by setting this system property to true. Another proactive measure or another action that can be taken and can also limit this vulnerability scope is to remove the JNDI class from your Java or from your Log4j setup. And of course, the best recommendation and the best recommended action is, of course, to upgrade. So remember, if you have Log4j version 1, you may not be subject to this vulnerability, because as far as I know, the Log4j format message lookup is not supported in Log4j version 1. However, the Log4j version 1 is end of life since 2015, so this might leave it not immune against other dozens of vulnerabilities and other RCEs, critical RCEs vulnerabilities. So it is always recommended to stick on the recommended platform or the recommended version by the vendor. So upgrading to 15.0 is recommended, and you need to consider this action, and no more patches will be released to version 1. You can detect the activities related to Log4j in your environment if you have SIEM solution. It is important for nowadays to have a SIEM solution, to have SOC team, even if it was SOC as a service. And the capability of SIEM solution will allow you to know if you are being exploited, or if you have, if you are a target for scanning or reconnaissance by outsiders. What we are meaning here is that you may not be vulnerable, but you are a good business, or you are a big enterprise in your country, and threat actors are trying to exploit you or trying to do a scanning against your published services in order to figure if you are vulnerable to this vulnerability or not. So having a SIEM solution may help you, because SIEM solution is basically aggregating all logs from your environment, and with the expert teams that are running the SIEM solution, you can have a Sigma rule converted to any kind of SIEM solution you are using to make the things more clear to you. Let me show you what is Sigma rule is. This is the Sigma rule that is detecting the indicator of compromise, or let's say the requests are related to the new Log4j vulnerability. So this is what is called Sigma rule. And if you have any SIEM solution in your environment, for example, you have Splunk, you have QRadar, you have ArcSight, you have any kind of SIEM solution or log analytics platform, you can convert the Sigma rule to the format that is applicable with your SIEM solution in your environment. So if you have a SIEM solution, you can run these queries and automate it during these days, so you can be certain or have a clear vision if your environment is being exploited with this vulnerability or not. Also, we have a YARA rule. This YARA is essentially a tool that is evaluating hashes or patterns for a single file. So the credit goes to the URL written on the slide here. I will leave his profile in my video. He is doing a great job. He is the one who created the Sigma rule and created the YARA rule. You can use your YARA rule in your environment if you are using it to query multiple host in your environment if the files related or the vulnerable files, the jar files for Log4j exist in your networks or not. So the YARA rule can provide you a great deal of information if you are running a vulnerable components in your environment or not. Of course, you can do the same by Linux administrator using the locate command, and you can automate the process using Ansible. But YARA rule is also a great way to detect if you have this vulnerable component in your infrastructure. You can find the Sigma rule in this URL, and you can find the YARA rule in this URL, and of course I will attach both of them in the description. So that was all regarding the new content that I was releasing or saying about Log4j. Following is general security countermeasures or general security practices that we all need to consider in order to be ready for such incidents in the future. For the first of all, we need to have a clear patch management process. For many companies and many enterprises, patch management may not be considered mature. We need to consider the patch management process. We need to have an effective and documented change management process. We need to have a rollback scenario before upgrading. I understand that for many people, they prefer to not do any kind of upgrade to keep the stability of this environment. But in 2021, this year, it is not a good practice. We have many threat actors that are trying to exploit your systems for their gain. So you have to be to do the task or to do the job from your side by ensuring that you are not running any vulnerable component in your environment. So having a clear patch management is now considered a mandatory. Also, you may consider purchasing one of the vulnerability scanners such as Tenable, Nessus, Qualys, and these vulnerability scanners will of course assist you if you are doing like monthly vulnerability scanning. You will have a great vision about what is the security posture in your environment and how is your security, how is your patching, and how much critical vulnerabilities are existing. For some people or for many businesses, since the releasing of this critical vulnerability, they are suffering to understand or to detect how many systems in their environment are running this vulnerable component. But if you have Tenable, Nessus, or have Qualys, both vendors are already released the plugins that allow you to do a check to see if certain system in your environment are running these vulnerable components. So vulnerability scanners is a great tool. Consider it please in your security controls, because it may save you one day. The third recommendation, you need to have web application firewall. If you are hosting web applications in your DMZ and you are caring about security, and these websites are holding sensitive data or essential to keep your business running, consider please buying a web application firewall. If you are hosting your web application on a cloud provider such as Amazon or Azure or Alibaba or OCI, they already have a firewall or web application firewall as a service. So please consider the web application firewall, because it can protect you against many types of attacks. But don't consider web application firewall as a permanent solution. Web application firewall can buy you a time while you are with your developer are researching how to patch and upgrade these vulnerable components. But using web application firewall, you can do a kind of protection. For example, you can deny any of payloads or any HTTP requests that are reaching your website asking to exploit the JNDI vulnerability. Also, intrusion prevention system will provide you a sort of virtual patching, but please consider you are doing intrusion prevention for your appliances for the encrypted traffic as well. Because in many implementation, I saw that the IPS is implemented, but it is protecting servers that are communicating or are reachable by end users using SSL protocol. And the IPS in between doesn't do the capability of doing SSL inspection, and the TLS handshake or the SSL keys are not imported in this intrusion prevention system. If you don't fully understand what I'm talking about, it's okay. That's good. That's cool. I understand that many of the watchers are already developers and don't have a kind of experience with network security and network security control. But for those who are working in network security, I am certain that they are understanding what I do really mean. The last but not least, the geo-IP database-based filtering, which I already mentioned in my last video, because the many threat intel resources are clarifying or are declaring that the scanners and the websites that are hosting the payload are coming from proxies and Tor proxies and from certain countries. So if you have geo-IP or geographic IP-based filtering, you can restrict the access to your services from certain countries. These countries, you don't have a business with them, or you don't have a business deals or client at these countries. So you can use geo-IP based filtering in such days. Also, DNS sync hole will save you from malicious DNS requests. So please consider to have a DNS sync hole feature in your environment. You having a unified repository for logs such as SIEMs will be very useful, and I clarified in my last slide why having a SIEM is very important nowadays. Of course, many of people may consider all of these recommendations are nice to have, but for me and for many of big enterprises, all of above is considered a mandatory. Some people may implement more stringent controls more than these controls. So this is not nice to have controls. This is a mandatory controls, and you need to really consider it. So that was all this, for this video. I will post, or I will put all links described in this presentation in the description. Thank you for viewing and have a great day. Bye.